When I first started making Payday 3 videos back in 2023, I wrote some checks with my mouth I'm not sure I could actually cash, especially when I started showcasing truly busted builds, such as the headache-inducing scoped SA. I'm well aware that I basically diluted the game down to a point-and-click adventure, advertising some pretty toxic metas that made Payday 3's beleaguered skill system look even worse than it was. Now I must suffer the consequences after turning my back on the necessity of meta builds after recent comments where I claimed you can dominate the game's hardest difficulty with virtually any setup. Time then to put my money where my mouth is. If just about anything goes, then surely nothing goes just as well, which is exactly what we're going to find out today, as I ask and answer one simple question: can you beat Payday 3 with no skills? The rules for this run are incredibly straightforward. I have to beat Payday 3 without any skill points in the build, relying only on my game sense and meat shield crew to force my way to victory. Beating Payday 3 is obviously a bit of a nebulous concept, bearing in mind it is a game in slightly inactive development, but development nonetheless, meaning the number of heists in the game increases from month to month, or at least season to season. For simplicity's sake, we will be clearing every single one as it stands as of March 2025. That's a total of 8 base game heists, 4 side hustles and 4 DLC heists. Only Turbid Station requires stealth, so other than during that heist, I will be going loud before the first core objective of any heist. That means I can set up and take hostages, but can't really progress a heist in stealth. Finally, I've also decided I will use a different primary weapon for every loud heist. Part of the obvious balancing issue in the game right now is that the FSA and Persuasion shotguns outperform virtually every other weapon, so if I just lean on them to solve all my problems, I'm not sure I'm proving all that much. Also, I desperately need to remember what half the game's arsenal feels like to play with, bearing in mind I haven't used half the roster since launch week. Otherwise, there are no additional limitations. I'll be playing on a level 150 account and will have access to every gun, tool, armor type and overskill option to make things a little more interesting. I did consider a true level 1 run, but I think the lack of any variety might have bored us all to death. That said, without access to any of my favourite crutches, ammo funnel, replenish, transporter, and with literally no method of gaining grit, edge or rush outside of donuts, this should be interesting. Instead, I'll be forced to rely on some of the highly overpowered DLC weapons, almost forgotten concepts such as tactical hostage taking, and a little game knowledge and ingenuity to tie it all together, as we climb back into the saddle for No Rest for the Wicked. My most played heist ever since the very first beta, No Rest is one of the few heists that seems to have stood the test of time, and probably works around the game's skills better than any other, given its early development, making it a perfect foil to this entire concept. Foolishly, I decided to head in with the undisputed best weapon in the game, just to give me an idea of what the overall difficulty of this challenge will look like. I genuinely have no idea, as there's seldom any good reason to switch up my build and try riskier things out. That said, the FSA will not be available on many of the game's hardest heists later on. In terms of the rest of the build, I'll be running the Deagle in my secondary slot, although we'll change this up too, despite it being the top dog at the moment. The light ballistic vest, flashbang, armor bag, and a minigun overkill weapon. The basic idea here is to lean on armor repair kits found around the heist and traded for to keep topping up that finite resource, but relying on the extra damage reduction it offers to absorb more damage. Then, if all else fails, I always have the minigun passive to regen once myself and the crew run out of plates. In total, I can use 10 additional plates per heist, assuming the AI only drop me armor bags, and I bring 1 as a favour, plus whatever repair kits I can scavenge, sort of bringing back that closely limited resource system the game was designed around. Unfortunately, I've fully trained my brain to function around Payday 3's weird mechanics. I'm always reloading to try to re-up my buffs, I'm always seeking kills rather than taking cover, as that's a faster way to recharge my armor, and I never bother running over ammo packs as I expect the game to do that job for me automatically. These are lethally bad habits to carry over to a run such as this one. Instead of challenging cops, I should be waiting out my armor's recharge timer, preserving the plates for as long as they'll hold. On the plus side, the FSA was still doing a great job of turning everything into a fine red mist, but between reloads I was taking chip damage I couldn't really afford, and simply wasn't used to dealing with. This left me armorless and facing the first down of the run, but at the perfect time as the boys dropped ample resources to get me back on my feet. For once, the act of trading civs was less about filling the map with more healing than an army would ever need, and more about staving off the assault, as time management once again feels like it matters. An ill-thought-out journey across the road to take out the FBI van showcased just how important those ARKs would be though. keeping me alive and healthy to open up the vault. Both my guns are one-shot machines, so when the cops start funneling like this, I finally feel in control again, grabbing the first set of bags and loading them into the van, which was sticking around thanks to my favour spent pre-heist. On average, this is probably the easy approach as it saves bag moving time, important when I don't have access to transporter to trivialise that aspect of the game. The problem is, the bank courtyard is a far messier location than out by the main road, with snipers keeping my crew AI pinned to the deck as I struggle to land a shot with my deagle, forcing me to drop my own armor bag as the assault ended just in time to release the pressure. What I didn't realise is that the final charge activates early with this favour, meaning as soon as the van was loaded, I was in trouble, facing down a bulldozer who I shredded with the minigun, but not before he'd eviscerated my final true armour plates. This left me reliant on a slowly gained plate, courtesy of said minigun, holding down the corridor of death long enough to reset and get those bollards lowered, looping around the heist one final time to sufficiently confuse the AI before spraying through the crowd and getting picked up by the much improved crew AI right before the escape van. Far from the cleanest heist, but still a first time completion. Not shabby for someone whose last experience with the game was recording jacket throwing shapes. I'll admit though, I am heavily reliant on my crew AI, not for damage, but for distraction. They came in clutch here, and will likely be just as crucial for road rage, the first major hurdle I'm expecting to be faced with. Strategy change, first up, weapon of choice, the R900. This sniper is far more functional than it used to be, and there are a few heists in the game it's better suited to than road rage. The ability to land collaterals on cops who love to line up alongside the road and keep the opposing sniper population in check is worthwhile. What might be more surprising is my decision to go back to that launch 4-plate meta with the heavy ballistic lining. For me, this basically functions as 2 bonus plates to start the heist with, which I see as useful for the initial drive, enabling me to push the earlier stages of the mission harder, hopefully setting up for a successful clear. A sound plan on paper, but within the first 30 seconds of things going loud, both my weapons and armour of choice failed to do their jobs, as I ate a single sniper round which took all 4 plates in the blink of an eye. I'm not sure it could have gone worse, forcing me to use my armor bag immediately and leaving me on the back foot. Sociopath gave me a moment's hope as what is effectively a source of occasional immortality, but not enough as it couldn't restore my armor as the minigun had before it, and my crew picked a terrible time to become nihilists. First failure, very well deserved. The crew AI on this heist is straight up broken at the moment, so I'm not surprised they couldn't be asked reviving me. Half the time they're too busy teleporting rather than functioning as intended. To be clear, this is another bug in the game that was spotted before the update went live that's remained there for 7 weeks. The joys of live service. This time, I stayed on top of the snipers though, meaning neither me nor my gang of nightcrawlers were getting peppered. A gameplay change for the better that I've immediately encountered isn't how attachments actually seem to matter. Usually I'd run the sniper with a quick pull mag to better fit in meta skills like combat reload, because ammo funnel makes mag size fairly irrelevant. Here I don't have access to those skills, so I'm free to run the extended mag and fully benefit from 5 extra shots per reload, a rare bit of attachment expression. My problem with skills like ammo funnel and replenish remains how universally easy they are to access, and I believe this is further evidence of what the nerfs last year should have looked like and what they could have potentially enabled. Anyway, but enough about old wounds, let's talk about the new ones I'm currently experiencing as my 4-plate setup is finally breached. Still, I'm happy to make it far enough to reach an area with more cover on all sides and secure the first assault break. I'm quite limited in terms of armor repair kits on this heist, so these AI drops are even more important. Chewing through a further set of plates whilst trying to hold out in smoke to force open the armoured vehicle's hatch before the assault wave really kicked off. You might wonder how I managed from here, down to very limited resources and needing to somehow secure 8 bags of heavy loot. Well, if you ever saw my original Overkill solo challenge, back when the game was hard enough even with skills, you'll know of a little spot that really confuses the AI. Simply standing back here by the chimney stacks removes you from view of their pathing logic, meaning the only way cops will shoot is if they can explicitly see you. In fact, it seems to even mess with their spawns after a while, with only snipers offering any sort of resistance. Mad how this remains a viable cheese strat a year and a half on. I eventually got brave and picked up the final objectives before escape, but after losing that final plate and needing to use my panic button, I returned to the safety and security of the great invisible scaffolding. Whilst my crew were face-tanking bulldozers, I was free to fire potshots, holding out as the boys just chain revived each other. It's possible for all three to go down when faced with a lot of firepower, but when in close proximity to one another, it's fairly likely they'll out-revive any DPS and remain a potent distraction for the rest of the wave. Hell, at least it gave me something to do. Annoyingly, the getaway was on the opposite side of the bridge, resulting in one very close call as I tried to force a path to victory, but again, the sanctity of this spot will never be breached, meaning all I needed to do was hold out another wave, spectating the Chuckle Brothers falling over each other, before I was free to use the regrouping phase to move the final set of backs. Even with no armor remaining, and the final charge upon us, I was never in real danger so long as I clung onto that overkill charge, allowing me to fully tank through the final sprint and objective, clearing this heist in successful, if rather dishonourable fashion. From one of the run's more challenging vanilla heists to what's comfortably its simplest, Dirty Ice has a fairly foolproof speedrun strategy that can still be performed with zero skills. Simply sprint inside, grab an employee, get the basement open, and set off the alarm to call in Bile on the roadside. From there it's just a case of scrambling to grab the higher value jewellery in the back, as well as the rare stone, allowing us to escape not long after the first assault begins. I used the SG Compact 7 here as it's probably the worst gun in the game these days, and I barely need something capable of shooting to get this done. In all honesty, all loot was on the cards, but I decided to keep things simple and escape after just 4 minutes. Roll the Cradle next, a heist more frequently played out in stealth that never felt properly designed for loud in the first place. After messing around with 3 different armor types already, I decided to go back to the default Adaptive. Whilst I didn't expect it to be meta within this sort of challenge, given it doesn't get much out of armor repair kits, the truth of the matter is that I'd rather have armor that consistently provides me with the same level of protection, rather than one that gradually weakens over time. It's simply easier to plan and make plays around an option that doesn't deviate, even if it does take more of a beating up front. My weapon of choice for this heist was the thick PC9, a somewhat underused SMG that does feel a lot weaker with only a capped 30 round mag. My first down came at the hands of a couple of pixels of gas, which really can melt my limited health bar. I think the Fortitude skill line has spoilt me just a little bit. This heist also scales quite quickly, with heavies and dozers responding the moment you open the main loot vault. This left us backed into a corner with just enough damage to keep them at bay whilst my ammo supplies last. After losing my final plate, Sociopath was just enough to keep me alive briefly, but not until the end of the assault, as my last life gave way to an amusingly casual deathfall. Positioning and timing were the keys to getting this run back on track. Keeping the cops in pursuit really helps as they never really settle to do enough damage to your crew, as does moving the first loot bags before opening the vault, keeping the basic waves going for as long as possible, and using up Sociopath charges and fire extinguishers to clear a path in between lulls in the waves. Another fun fact for you, this heist RNG is tied together, so if you have the vault beneath the manager's office, the correct code will always be this one on the seat, and vice versa with the other potential code documents and spawn locations, simplifying that section of the heist and enabling me to time it during a trading phase right after healing back up to full health and armor. The FBI assault was a bit of a distraction, but not enough to waylay me for long, avoiding head-on combat with the now spawning dozers and activating the final charge with armor still in my back pocket. Finally, after hundreds of playthroughs of this heist, I found a use for the bathrooms, holding at this nauseatingly fluorescent choke point without being told no spray no lay, and offered a splash of Armani for the first time in my clubbing life. Shout out to my fellow British 18+-year-olds. If you know, you know. Anyway, bathroom strats have hardly been a novel idea across my Payday career, we've all seen their efficacy in the past. I'm not going to stop playing out the classics, getting to really rub the cop's nose in it on the escape by charging up yet another baseball bat beatdown to victory. Moving on to yet another nighttime heist, Under the Surface feels like a lot of busy work with its many circles and QR code seeking objectives, but with how much control it gives us over the pacing of assault waves, we're free to complete most of that busy work whilst facing down only the lowest level of resistance. Sadly, not long after finally progressing the assault by grabbing mission critical paintings, I found myself caught out of cover and taken down just before I could drop my armor bag or earn an overskill charge, wasting 10 minutes of AFK circle standing for no good reason after my crew got themselves equally crushed on the open rooftop. Attempt 2 went roughly the same, with the only clear variation being a rare FBI van spawn, punishing me for my slow progress. All was as expected, until after a satisfying rampage with my Sociopath charge, I went to put the bat away manually to prepare to start moving bags at the exact same moment my overkill bar ran dry. It was then that I rediscovered something I'd seen on the Reddit when the last update went live. the endless baseball bat. Essentially, you can get stunned into this effect without any input, but even easier and less random in occurrence, you can reactivate the bat instantly, completely for free, by simply pressing your overkill button at the same moment it's due to expire, keeping the bat out and resetting the degradation timer, enabling you to go ham with the bat once more. This can be repeated as many times as possible, so long as you nail the quite generous timing window. Honestly, the best thing about this bug is the fact that it enables you to hear the entire Sociopath song play out, which is otherwise almost impossible to do with kills alone. I'm not sure how I feel about using this too often, but given there's still an element of skill to it, as the cops can easily negate that window by dealing damage directly, and I've allowed myself to abuse bugs in past runs, this won't be the final time you'll see an extended jacket rampage. For a heist like Under the Surface though, the glitch is far from necessary, as after firing this cloaker satisfyingly out of a window, I ran directly to the escape with the final Vicario painting in hand, deciding that even the power of the Moscone wouldn't be ideal up against a dozer with no skills to assist. Gold End Shark is the next major roadblock, not necessarily a difficult heist early on, but one that throws dozers at you the second you open the vault up, meaning everything from that point is on the clock. I decided to go back to the SMG pool on this one, grabbing the war and heading off to stand in more circles whilst watching a timer count down. Iconic Payday 3 gameplay. Once I could delay the assault no longer, I found myself quickly missing that peace and quiet, extending that bit too far in an attempt to preserve my hostage supply, and almost losing my armor early before Sociopath saved the day. Being able to complete most objectives like this doesn't half help our chances. Even so, I found myself armorless heading into the vault room, forcing an early usage of my equipment. Fearing cloakers, I gobbled up both here, but that was also a mistake. It's crucial I maintain one plate so my ARKs go further, meaning this left me in an even worse spot when I overplayed my hand trying to stop what I feared happening to the last armor bag my crew dropped. Not only seeing that go up in acid, but also losing my second plate on the failed rescue mission. Down to just my health bar for at least the entirety of this wave, it was at this moment I spotted the second issue, an FBI assault that I'd completely failed to notice. The only solution, flailing around with a baseball bat until my problems went away, actually managing to get the boys back up, giving us a sliver of hope. Those problems persisted though, as I still hadn't taken down the van and was facing down the 10 cloakers per minute issue. However, thanks to a clutch revive and the cops' shoddy pathing, I was able to make a break for it before simply hiding out for what short time was left on the assault wave. With the last of our resources, I healed up once more, actually managing to make it inside the vault and call in Bile. Here my armor was once again breached as I was left completely reliant on the surprisingly high DPS of the jackknife, barely surviving the assault and making it up to the chopper on what were truly my last legs this time. Alas, even with its impressive power, Sociopath just isn't much good up against dozers, forcing me to flee and, with no downs remaining, once again retreat to the old ways. That's right, we're back in a single entrance office, praying a stray bullet doesn't turn me into Raygun. Yikes, at least we now know Jacket has the potential for an Olympic showing. Anyway, on attempt 2 I maintained my resources for substantially longer, actually reaching the end of the first assault with 2 plates and a full bar of adrenaline for what little that's worth. From that position I was free to just hold out at the security room with a sieve in situ to stop the naders and all the extra resources held in the cabinets to keep me topped up. One more assault out the way and in far greater control, I opened the vault, setting us up for a much harder second half of the heist. This time I paid attention to shade and went straight to deal with the FBI van, which did get me cloaked, and thanks to my crew having all the urgency of Starbreeze when it comes to updating the game, wasted a life. On the plus side, I developed a new effective strategy. Even if I can't transport multiple bags at once, what I can do is act as bodyguard for my 3 stooges following behind, pulling out the bat and clearing a path for my pack mules to assist in securing the all-important loot. Just so long as they aren't getting singled out on the way, as they now have the technology to use the all-important ziplines themselves, they keep up far better than they once did. This bank heist requires almost all loot on overkill, requiring one final trip during another lull in the assault to load up and clear this one after a painstaking 26 minutes, getting the all-bag bonus as icing on the cake. 99 boxes next, the sniper paradise that punishes any aggressive play thanks to its 99 sightlines. With the post-nerf SA save for this mid to long range heist, I still had an excellent option up against those snipers that can one-shot without edge, something the Adelaide can't muster, hence why I'm avoiding it so far. I'm incredibly rusty with this thing, but the first assault was clean enough. It's only when the circles start coming into the equation I begin to struggle, losing plates of armor at an unsustainable rate and finding myself again needing to rampage. Even that can be countered though, as a cloaker dropped me in front of my disinterested crew once more, not only wasting a life, but more crucially wasting the sociopath timer, leaving me wide open without a leg to stand on just seconds later. I'd love to say attempt 2 went better, but in all honesty, despite being ultimately successful, this was a vastly more stressful experience. Nothing changed with the setup, I was still container camping for the most part, doing so much more successfully this time and even securing the first of the 2 bags. However, things went downhill from there. Not for the first time, the only thing that can shut down Sociopath is the Cloaker, doing so in a familiar, dangerous location, as the crew AI don't have a clue how to quickly access you across all those fun parkour targets, pulling off their slides and flips before bothering to lend me a hand. Hoxton suffered the most, going directly into custody, but I wasn't home free myself yet, as, would you believe it, it happened again just a couple of minutes later, this time getting cuffed as Dallas seemingly unlocked Inspire to get me up in time. The game took pity on me there, giving me a second chance at everyone's favourite task, circle standing baby. I can't wait to get onto the DLC heist, if only to avoid this godforsaken objective. Anyhow, the timing of grabbing sample 2 was almost perfect, as most of the final charge waves spawned in behind, granting me a fairly decent march on my pursuers, allowing me to clear the heist at the second time of asking. More of the same over on Touch the Sky. This is probably the second simplest loud heist in the base game, which I chose to speed up even further by bringing the stashed thermite asset, only to then slow things down by managing to let Mason Laurent escape. Whoops. Anyway, being a skillless meta, the KU is definitely one of the best weapons in the game. Handles like a dream, has loads of ammo capacity, and hits bloody hard. Probably wasted on a heist like Touch the Sky as I breezed through the first assault wave, bat in hand, before holding out at the drill without too many interruptions, with only the power of the AK. Cloakers remain problematic, but at least this time the boys were switched on, helping me finish off the drill and secure the correct code, running into one final bulldozer-shaped roadblock before taking him out under the cover of smoke, needing to press the oh shit button one final time to tank a second dozer at the escape. This thing really might be just a little too abusable if you use it correctly. Okay, that's the base game in the bag. 18 months ago I could put this out and call it a video, but not today, and trust me, I've saved the true suffering for the second half. Starting with Turbid Station, a classic heist that failed to get the memo on what it was supposed to be back in Payday 2. You see, in converting this fast-paced arcadey stealth classic into Payday 3's very deliberate and planned stealth system, it lost something important. I think it's called fun. I am kidding, I'm not a Turbid hater, I actually liked it at launch, but it would be fair to say this heist flow is all over the place. The map layout is designed to be played at 100 miles per hour, whilst Payday 3 stealth drops you in a school-restricted zone. Go full throttle for even a second and you'll have every guard on the map reacting to your footsteps and a toddler on your windshield. Security is way too good at noticing you hacking open the trains, and if they do for even a second, they'll throw the entire map into high alert indefinitely. Coupled with the cops' sharp eyes in Payday 3 and my complete lack of skills, you can see how Run 1 quickly came to an abrupt close. Attempt 2 fell apart in what's about to become a familiar sight, as heading into the basement often felt perilous without extra movement speed, skills to cover my kills, or even a way to hack cams. Run 3 was just bad play though, I can't really complain about anything but my own gameplay there. 4 ended in a bloody fashion early on after my takedowns were spotted, whilst 5 was thwarted by the lead guard noticing the foreman in a compromised position. On 6 I was damn close to getting the second satellite part free before the indestructible camera maze ruined me once more, spotting a pretty foolhardy kill. Runs 7 and 8 didn't make it past 2 minutes after I stumbled into guards early on both attempts, with this one in particular ending uniquely after this guy was spotted stapled to a wall. Why they didn't bring body bags back, I will never know. The ragdolls are hilarious, but can be a massive source of frustration, again contributing to a swift end on attempt 9 when I was caught messing around trying to drag this fella through a gate, one of the most arbitrarily awkward actions in the entire game. Into double figures now as the lead guard showed up out of nowhere to stop 10 dead in its tracks. I'm not even sure what ended attempt 11 early, maybe if 2 of your train hacks are spotted simultaneously it takes things loud, I genuinely don't know. Their entire ability to notice hacks in progress is one of the main offenders, slowing this heist down to a crawl. A drone caught me embracing a sieve to instantly raise the alarm on run 12, and although 13 lucked to be going the distance, simply needing to locate the hard drive to escape, my old nemesis, the basement, was back, as even the interceptor overskill couldn't save me from another Benny Hill style slip up. On the 14th and fortunately final attempt, I pulled it together, getting the dream RNG once more, and only needing the hard drive and QR code hack to procure both parts, not even needing to step foot inside the dreaded basement. Ironically, this trivial stealth heist has been the toughest and most time-consuming challenge on the run so far. This is either evidence of the fact that stealth skills matter, I suck at Payday 3 stealth, or Turbid Station is an abomination of a heist no one should have to suffer through. Probably a bit of all three if I'm being honest. Anyway, with that labour out of the way, cook-off is mercifully easy. I went in with the Chanit or FAMAS on this one, which actually feels solid here in a way you won't always find in regular gameplay, where one-shot weapons rule the roost and 3-round bursts feel irrelevant. Without skills and edge to push up my numbers though, firing 3 bullets over 1 feels genuinely useful again. Coupled with the fact that we only need to cook 3 bags of meth, this heist really isn't too grueling, pushing to the escape without even needing to drop my 2 plates of armour for once. Diamond District is also a what you make of it heist, meaning another layup within the context of this run. Without the need to clean all the jewellery, I could simply focus on clearing out the heist methodically, moving from store to store as things got too heated. I rapidly learned my lesson that trying to take over this major spawn and choke point wasn't a great idea, with even the buff northwest lacking the damage to cleave through, using up my armour reserve before switching tactics to the opposite side of the heist. With so many civs locked in when the alarms went off, I always had a fresh source of trades to make, granting me even more time and resources to properly progress the heist. With this being such a bag-heavy heist, I decided I might be better off for going sociopath, instead defaulting back to the minigun, less for its regenerative properties and more so as a way of building up damage resistance before carrying loot to Twitch's stolen police van. Another important favour on this heist. With one final push at a massive 50% damage reduction, I was able to comfortably clear a path over to the escape, ending this one with 12 of 14 bags secured and very few speed bumps on the way to victory. Always nice for a little mid-run reprieve, which I was gonna need for what's coming next. Payday 3's most recent heist, First World Bank, isn't one that necessarily jumps out to you as potentially insurmountable, but it probably should. Yes, it has a lot of potential hostages, and you can really trivialise the first few objectives if you know what you're doing. But once inside the second section of the bank, things rapidly heat up. The spawns here are close and relentless, especially as a solo player with limited DPS. I'm running the ATK here, better known as the MP5, which is a solid weapon. Probably a top 5 primary in my opinion, but even it lacks DPS to break those charging assaults. During the thermite section, I repeatedly found myself on death's door with no easy way to heal up or clear a path forward. Safe havens feel few and far between on this one, and the strategy we've adopted in the past of staying on the move and keeping the cops trailing doesn't work when the spawn logic and map design is solid enough to counter it. With 0 downs remaining, I just about survived this almost fatal wave, predominantly again thanks to Sociopath granting me a free ticket back to the lobby where an assault bag awaited. With this second wind, I proceeded to wait out one additional assault wave in the vault before finally picking up the 4th loot bag, which instantly starts the most brutally crushing final charge in the game. Try as I might to clear a path with Sociopath, I was only able to get 3 bags into the vents before the crew got themselves terribly lost and placed into custody. I initially outsmarted the heavies by simply heading deeper into the vault and distracting them with a loot bag, an actual bloody Tom and Jerry strat that worked long enough for my crew to return as I made it just beyond the halfway mark in Begs. Alas, once more, my AI couldn't be trusted to get back inside the defensible vault with me, as they'll always go back for each other, resulting in certain death at times. Whilst my strategy had worked perfectly on regular bag-fearing cops, dozers don't think that way, meaning once he got his fat ass through the doorway, even with a full mag dump, I lacked the DPS to take him down alone, ending this attempt after a grueling 30-minute struggle. Honestly, I don't have a better strategy for that final charge. I think maybe the minigun would be an option with its massive damage reduction, but that would really involve stacking them up. Somehow I need to beat back the main wave whilst taking out a pair of lethal dozers every couple of minutes to even be with a chance of securing more than 7 bags. The bat is obviously an option, and I can abuse the reset glitch to extend my invulnerability and increase my lethality, as even final charge waves need time to respawn. But then there's the issue of carrying bags, which isn't possible with the bat equipped, and Sociopath's terrible matchup into dozers who will simply eat your cooldown 9 times out of 10. On attempt 2, I regressed, to be honest, not even getting the chance to fend off dozers before the regular wave of heavies swarmed over my crew, taking my socio cooldown and leaving me practically defenseless. Attempt 3 went far better throughout the early portion of the heist, making it inside the vault without any disasters until a cloaker followed me inside, taking down my first health bar and splitting up the crew, resulting in them going full lemming mode and getting themselves deleted one at a time. I was frantically snatching loose cash in an attempt to make it back to my feet via Sociopath, but again need default to hiding on the vault table and one-shotting anyone who came to investigate. The mistake I made was picking up a fourth bag to make room on said table, as that activated the final charge just seconds before the assault wave was due to end, so despite the gang returning to my side, they didn't last long, sending me packing straight back to my timeout corner, which a cloaker breached this time around, kicking me with less than a second to react. Fair enough, I need to go back to the drawing board on this one. Whilst it wasn't the sole reason for any of my previous failures, I do feel like I'm juggling too many problems at once with my current weapon setup, so instead we'll be switching over to probably the best remaining weapon in my arsenal, the 3-round burst M7 Pursuivant shotgun, predominantly so that I have a chance if cornered by a dozer again. This beast is also excellent up against crowds, and doesn't seem to suffer as much as I anticipated from the lack of ammo funnel. It's a shame though, as I was saving it for fear and greed. With a perfect negotiation phase, I was already past the first core obstacle by the time trading hit again. Unfortunately, my timing was way off here as I dove headlong to recover the thermite without any thought of the fresh wave of spawns. On the plus side, there was already an armor bag placed down by the crew to patch up on the way back, meaning nothing crucial was lost as a result of this slip-up. Again, the thermite objective was relatively uneventful, with a perfectly timed assault transition right as I picked up the fourth bag. Strangely, an FBI assault coincided with the final charge, forcing me to go miles out of my way at the worst possible moment. But again, this seemed to be a double-edged sword as I led the pursuing group on a wild goose chase, giving me the room to secure bags 7 and 8. I lost my allies in the process, but found something much more important as a result. Much like the scaffolding in Road Rage, this security room seems to exist on a different plane of existence to the rest of the heist. So long as you stay out of sight, the cops will never push you in here. And with a hostage to prevent any gas lobbing shenanigans, I was free to wait for my crew to rematerialise out of thin air. This is going to be a massively useful bit of information, but sadly not to the benefit of this attempt. As although the cops on the map are pretty much lobotomised whilst I'm inside, they switch on again as soon as I leave. With no breaks in the assault wave, dozers are free to wait in ambush like fat cloakers the second I step out, getting kicked flaccid just 3 bags from victory. To be clear with you, whilst this is only attempt 5 we're on, Payday 3 is a game that ramps heavily into the late stages of a heist. I've had times I've made it onto attempt 15 on heists such as Slaughterhouse and Payday 2, and in total it hasn't taken as long as these 30-minute plus endeavours. This is genuinely a nightmare, coming as a massive surprise bearing in mind the most I've failed a single loud heist before this one is just a single time. It's pretty much all down to the way the final charge operates, as this is the only heist I can think of that combines the loot moving section with that mechanic. As for the other parts of the heist, they were just a case of conserving as many resources to battle through the finale, not getting caught out when placing the thermite this time around, and abusing some sociopath resets to speed up the entire burning process. Once inside, I again took the opportunity to secure the 3 freebie bags before the final charge trigger, giving me just enough time to move an additional 3 before the full assault wave hit. From there, my decision to switch to the M7 finally paid off, tearing through the faceplate of the first dozer inside before doing enough to survive an almost lethal encounter with the second. Thanks to Sociopath, I was then free to push the gang back to the loot chute once more, moving 3 bags at a time, as that was all I needed to complete this one in 2 more trips. Whilst the gang didn't make it, the loot did, meaning I could go back to the discovery I'd made earlier, holding out for the entirety of their custody sentences inside the mysteriously invisible security room, only poking my head out to grab some extra overkill bar from time to time. Immediately upon their return, the lads ran directly out to their doom, but with the surprisingly high damage over range my shotgun was pumping out, I was able to keep them alive, baiting in a dozer and clearing him off the map before taking the risk and running for the remaining bags. A taser, of all things, nearly dropped me to my final life before a dozer finished the job, but with just enough gas in the tank for one more Sociopath rush, I secured a brutal path out of the vault, healing up after making it all the way back to my pre-placed resources. This sprint to the entrance had other positives too, dragging most cops away from the vents as I finally relinquished my Sociopath charge and dropped the final 2 bags inside. Truly on my last legs at this stage, I flanked around once more, making it to the C4 bathroom and blasting a path to victory. After hours of playing this heist, the scripted dozer ambush finally played out at the one moment I'd rather it hadn't. but he doesn't have the reaction time to do any damage to a sprinting heister, enabling me to make that last journey over to the escape van, clearing this monumentally challenging heist at the 6th time of asking. Just don't ask if I could have done it without the sociopath bug. Honestly, rediscovering that has been a godsend if only for this heist. Undoubtedly, looking at what made it so difficult, First World Bank should be as tough as this run gets. Syntax Error, the first DLC heist, is up next, and as much as it can be a tricky customer with hard to track spawns, the baseball bat and winding corridors makes it reasonably easy to keep the cops in pursuit mode and never get trapped in a corner. It would have helped if my team had dropped their resources on solid ground though, seemingly sending the armor bag I so crave directly to the Shadow Realm. This is why I never trust staircases in video games. Once again, too busy rampaging to keep my exposed health bar off limits, I failed to notice the FBI assault indicator, which explains the sheer density of skulls to crack, although I eventually returned to the surface to deal with that pesky satellite van. I've also got to give a massive shout out to the Ziv Commando. From undoubtedly the worst weapon in the game to a more than competent close range fiend, this thing's glow up was responsible for my lack of struggle within the tight hallways of the Scry Digital compound itself. Once back on the surface and waiting out the escape, I found things a little harder, holding the line Saving Private Ryan style as my ammo supplies dwindled and I was forced to rely on exploding barrels and my impressively effective Raffica sidearm, waiting until the very last moment to activate Sociopath when the doses were right upon me, safely repositioning before timing my arrival back at the chopper with the drone data right as that invincibility wore off. Boys in Blue was probably the toughest heist in the game when it was added as the second DLC last summer, meaning it's still a worthy challenge to this day, although I have a few tricks up my sleeve to make things easier. The first of which was the donuts that I could place to finally unlock a source of grit, edge and rush, 10% buffs that I haven't seen on my UI in hours of gameplay. They weren't exactly the difference makers I hoped they'd be, so instead defaulted to plan B, hiding out in the unbelievably defensible shower area. This space can only be unlocked by finding a QR code on the map, but once you do, the cops are gonna funnel or get themselves lost most of the time trying to pass to you, making for some of the easier gameplay I've been faced with so far. I brought back the MP5 SMG for this one, probably the strongest remaining option in my arsenal now that I don't have to face down an endless assault. Even so, shortly after making it inside the lockup and stealing the first few bags of loot, things took a turn for the worst when the dozer flag activated, leading to this guy flattening me through a hail of SMG rounds. I got back on my feet thanks to a pre-placed armor bag, but that was the warning sign it was time to go, setting off the final charge by starting the van lowering process. As you can see, even with Sociopath being bugged, it's very easy to waste a charge, leaving me entirely exposed at the exact moment my entire crew hit the floor. With nowhere near enough damage or survivability to make a play here, I did the next best thing. Ran like a coward and did laps of the heist. I've learned that without them forced respawning, you can comfortably lead the entire assault wave on a full tour of the playspace with little to no risk so long as your map knowledge is decent. If you are crazy enough to attempt this without AI, this might be the only viable strategy, as I quite easily survived out in the open on my own for several minutes, long enough for the van to reach ground level and me to fill it with loot before the cops even properly caught back up with me, escaping this heist in a patient 20 minutes. Houston Breakout is probably the easiest of the DLC heists, massively helped by the optional nature of its final loot objectives. If I can free Houston, escape is all but guaranteed, meaning for once the difficulty is front loaded. I made it inside the courtroom before the alarms went off, giving me the perfect start with as many hostages as possible, setting up and defending the drill with sibs around to keep the shotgun cops and gas at bay. One nice thing about thermal drill objectives is the fact they can be managed almost completely from within the safe embrace of a sociopath rampage, making it even easier to crack Houston out without major incident. Another poorly timed FBI assault caught us out during the lockdown section, but spawns were too slow ramping up to really endanger my VF7S setup, the best gun in the game on launch and still a fairly solid option, even without the one-shot kill potential Edge brings. My route back up to the courtroom was a little more fraught with danger than I anticipated, but with Houston free, this one was all but in the bag, securing the gasoline to burn the correct evidence and open up a path to an early escape. I tested my luck in a melee scrap with a dozer, which didn't quite work out, although I did manage to strip him naked, but at this stage even the risk of something that foolhardy is non-existent, as completion was simply a cage assembly away, making for another easy clear. That brings us on to the final heist of the run, undisputably the hardest in the game, Fear and Greed, although I don't see it being quite as hair-pullingly frustrating as First World Bank was. Still, I need to be careful using up a precious casing mode spawn asset to give me a head start on objectives and civ control. In the process of setting up and gaining access to the security room, I somehow got myself cuffed through several feet of boxes, but as far as Payday 3 glitches go, it's fair to say I'm probably in a little bit of karmic debt. Delaying the first assault massively assists the objective flow, already having the USB key in my hands by the time the first wave landed. The Car 4 is a tried and true classic, and whilst not my first choice for this heist, is certainly capable in its own right, especially with extended mags. One thing making this heist notably harder though, is how early dozers start spawning, springing them on you the second you make it inside the control room. With no skills, ARs are probably my best option up against them, dealing with the faceplate from mid-range, limiting their potential destruction as I quite literally used Hoxton as a body shield. Round 2 in the Thunderdome of Bat vs Dozer action, I finally got the last laugh, bamboozling his AI with fancy footwork and giving him a little chiropractic adjustment. Just as well as I was out of armour and forced to drop my own bag before the final charge on the rooftop, something I was really hoping to hold out for. To make matters worse, I again lost my crew and was forced to go full Mario Kart mode, running laps of the trading floor as the cops struggled to keep up even more given the size of the heist. With the final code input and only a cloaker able to deal any direct damage to my health bar, it was time to turn Wall Street brown with the EMP and flee to the roof. Now, here is where things get very spicy. Lots to think about without answers to everything. This is a bit of a rock, paper, scissors situation. Basically, I need to defend 2 locations during an intense endless assault on a low cover rooftop. I can do that almost indefinitely against standard cops when in a sociopath rampage. However, then there's the matter of the snipers who spawn in awkward locations that constantly threaten to instantly end said rampage, and the dozers who I can match for damage in perfect conditions, but really need my primary out to do so effectively. The plan was to go bat mode for as long as possible, resetting out of harm's way at every available opportunity, whilst also trying to desperately keep any dozers separate and on the move at all times. Problem number 1, I've just learned that if your sociopath bar is at 0 but you're still protected by having just reactivated it, damage you take will go directly to armor or health instead, meaning I'm now wide open. Problem 2, when they catch you out, their spike damage is too unpredictable to time a reset on, meaning I'm now on death's door with no overkill weapon, no armor and barely a sliver of health. However, one thing I failed to notice when first playing this heist is still very much to my advantage. The trading floor does not go off limits once you enter the final charge, meaning I can return to armor up and, more importantly, bait these idiots down the elevator shaft all in one go, which looks as ridiculous as you might expect. So long as I leave them alive and my crew don't pick up too many kills, spawns stay capped, meaning I can lead them miles out of the way before sprinting back up to the rooftop utilising my superior speed and the ability to actually path efficiently, to make it up there with time to spare. By dropping a motion sensor, you can see just how slow and grouped these idiots become, spooling into a death ball that I simply don't need to worry about, instead moving the shipping crate a final couple of meters to become my makeshift bridge to total victory, clearing this heist and the entire challenge in just under 10 hours of playtime, proving that you can indeed beat Payday 3 without any skills, literally and figuratively. So, what have we learned? Well, for one, Payday 3 has a lot of abusable mechanics, especially related to its AI, hostage system and assault waves. For all my talk of certain weapons or skills being OP, at its core, there's no more overpowered strategy than the runaway technique. 2, the crew AI are still a bit thick, but they are now very effective blunt instruments, soaking up a lot of punishment and constantly reviving each other to create acres of space for the player. I'm also still very enamoured with their ability to drop resources, without which I certainly couldn't have completed this challenge so smoothly. 3, this game desperately needs more frequent updates addressing bugs and difficulty concerns. You probably shouldn't be able to get away with a lot of what I did on this challenge. Whilst it's very engaging as a solo player trying to make their own life as hard as possible, if you take away the self-imposed restrictions, the game is ludicrously trivial, which stings for a franchise once known for its imposing difficulty. Also, we've been able to use an almost endless version of Sociopath for upwards of 7 weeks now. It's not a great look having obvious and abusable bugs in your live service game for that length of time. But for once, thanks for not getting around to fixing it. On a more positive and lighter note, I enjoyed this challenge. It's the first time in a long time that Payday 3 has properly engaged me and forced me to pay attention to all its mechanical depth, instead of relying on a few simple skills to trivialize the entire experience. First World Bank with this rule set was head and shoulders the hardest task I've ever attempted in Payday 3, and probably up there with the most challenging experiences across the franchise. When you force yourself to strip the game back, there are positive things to say. The gunplay remains addictive, objectives are relatively well paced, and the more recent heists in particular have started to nail down that proper Payday feel again. It just all goes missing when you play online or with an overpowered build, skips all the most engaging facets of the design, and leaves you scouring the map for something to shoot at, literally competing for kills and enjoyment. I'd recommend giving this sort of challenge a try, even if you want to do so in a group. Hell, you could make it a lot easier, but still interesting if you only allowed yourself the clean slate skill. I had fun with this challenge and you just might too. That said, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to check out my Payday adjacent, Kknowley branded range of Apex gaming PCs. Take care, and I'll see you all very soon for this year's installment of Payday. A huge thank you to my dedicated Patreon backers. If you want to join this crew in going infamous, check out the link below and pledge as little as $2 to see your name in the credits, or get 24-hour early access to future videos and vote on upcoming content. Take care, I'll see you all soon.